The UN Security Council is due to vote on a resolution seeking a ceasefire in Syria. That vote's been pushed to today. It has been delayed on several occasions since Thursday. Russia wants changes to the draft that calls for a 30-day ceasefire in the country. The delays come as the death toll from airstrikes in rebel-held Eastern Ghouta soars. Nearly 500 people have been killed in less than a week. The United States, the United Kingdom and France want the resolution to be passed without delay. Well, let's get you more now on that story. I'm joined live from New York by our UN correspondent, John Terret. John, indeed, many countries calling for this resolution to be passed without delay. And of course, it has been delayed multiple times since Thursday. Just talk us through what's been happening at the Security Council.
Well, hey, Lindy, great to see you again. You know, this meeting began on Thursday, and they couldn't get it together on Thursday. They couldn't get it together on Friday. And now here we are for a relatively rare meeting on a Saturday. And what they're wrangling over is the first paragraph of the new resolution that is on the table, which hopefully will get us to a 30-day temporary ceasefire, certainly in Eastern Ghouta near Damascus, but also in several other areas around Syria as well. Now, a lot of people realize, I think, is that a lot of the violence has actually died down in recent months in Syria, but there are still very, very key hotspots, of which Eastern Ghouta is the most hot. And whenever the Council does adopt this resolution, assuming it does, there will then be, I think, 72 hours before the medics can move in with medical supplies and bandages and that sort of thing. Now, many Western countries suspect that the Russians are simply employing delaying tactics in order to buy time for their ally Bashar al-Assad to go on bombing Eastern Ghouta. Key issues in this document have been sent back to capital cities, and that always takes at least 24 hours because of the time difference. And the French have even gone so far as to say, look, if we don't get this right in the Security Council, then that'll be the end of the United Nations as we know it. Now, I can tell you the meeting is just getting underway in New York. The ambassadors are filing in. The ambassador from the Netherlands has just spoken to the media and said, we hope that we can come to a consensus. So right now, that doesn't sound very good, does it? We're just going to have to wait and see. Lindy?
And what about China, John? What's their stance on the ceasefire resolution?
Well, China never really changed big key issues. The policy going forward from Beijing is always the same, and that is that a political settlement to this is the only way out. And the ambassador from Beijing, a permanent representative here, said in the past 24 hours that he condemns all acts of violence against civilians. But then moving on from that, the Council, part of this delay is caused by the rebels in Ghouta themselves actually writing to the Security Council yesterday. They wrote them a letter, so they had to sit and digest that letter and go through it and work out what the response would be. The rebels in Ghouta are saying, look, we reject any plan under any ceasefire to move our people out of the basements where they're hiding and move them elsewhere in the country. Russia, of course, is pushing in this document for the ability for Syria to go on attacking people it calls terrorists. That's namely Al-Qaeda and ISIS, pretty much everybody really who might be attacking Damascus in the region. And Nikki Haley, who's the robust ambassador for the United States to the United Nations, has tweeted within the past 24 hours saying that she thinks it's all unbelievable that the Russians are stalling this vote, which they still are as of this moment. Lindy?
Well, we are seeing some live visuals. They're coming from New York. And as you mentioned, of course, leaders are filing in and that meeting is about to get underway. But John, just talk us through the key things that will happen today, especially if we work on the assumption that that resolution is passed.
I think we have to work on that resolution assumption, don't we? Because we've got nowhere else to go otherwise. And I say that because the Kuwaitis, who are the presidents of the Security Council for the month of February, are absolutely desperate to avoid a Russian veto. Now, as you know, all the 5 key permanent members of the Council, that's the United States, Britain, France, China and Russia, they all have vetoes. They can block any of these resolutions just with the wave of a hand, and the Kuwaitis are desperate that that doesn't happen. So they're working on this wording so that the Russians can get involved. Otherwise, if there's a veto, this violence will just continue on into the next week in Ghouta. I think what's going to happen at the moment, as you say, they're filing into the chamber here in New York. It is 17 hours GMT in New York City right now. That's midday. And if all goes to plan, they will have a vote at some stage, but there will also be some pretty big squabbles, I suspect, particularly between the United States and Russia, trying to blame each other for what's gone on here. Meantime, Lindy, as you know, the bombs are raining down on the families trapped in those basements in Eastern Ghouta.
There's no more time to waste, is there? Thanks very much, John Terret. Of course, we are keeping an eye on that story, but thanks indeed for that update.